so many people set themselves up with these ideas of who they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. And it's hard. A lot of people go to bed at night feeling like they failed that day.
One of the ways we can divide a personality is to being and doing, and so very often when there's a problem of not feeling like you deserve something and a lack of love, it really lands in the being part. Know what your value system is and live as congruently with that as you can. Be able to give some examples of how you lived according to your value system that day. That's really a part of doing.
It starts right here, deep in your heart. Start right here. Oh, that's where it starts. Right here. Well, look to your heart. It's always and only starting right here.
Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger bring over 90 years of clinical experience to this important podcast, and they offer you a guarantee. You will gain something of personal value from each episode. And now, what matters most.
It starts right here. Start right here.
Start right here, as the song says. I believe that song says that. And here we go again, starting right here. I was just thinking earlier today, Alan, about what you always say about start right here gets us as to what's next. Mm-hmm. And there's no connection to anything there. I just want to tell you, I was thinking about that earlier when I was talking to a friend of mine.
Such a great way to think about this is to think that, it now is very dynamic and has a lot of vitality to it when we let it happen. And it will move us to what's next and organically. I mean, this is that whole nonsense of us trying to control everything.
Okay, now I'm just going to pick it. We'll figure out. I'm going to get back to our topic in a minute, but I'm going to pick at your language just for a second because it's so indicative of how we as human beings, as Western humanoids, think. Now it's so powerful when we let it happen. We don't have a choice. We don't have the power to not have it happen. But no, I know you know that, but it's like that's our language. What we do for a living in one way is we listen to how people say things, listen to how we say things, and realize, oh my God, that's the mentality that we have. It's like because that's the grief that we have when we realize we have not been living in the moment. Is so many of those nows are gone.
Yes, and that's more what I was saying. I hope that I got that across.
I know what you meant.
Well, yes. But what I meant is if we let now move to next. See, I think, we were just talking about our buddy.
Yeah.
Right. Who's struggling with facing some heavy duty decisions in terms of surgery or radiation, a cancer problem. And in each option have different outcomes. And, you and I were talking about how frozen he is in the now. Right. He's got these two decisions and it's very hard to move to what's next for him, which is what are we going to decide? And that's what I was thinking. It's like it's so easy to get stuck with right now because I want to make the right decision. But, what is the right decision? Is the right decision based on the outcome? How can we base it on the outcome when we haven't lived it yet? I mean, this is where things get so crazy for us when I try to control, what's going to happen and how to, and even that decision-making process. I mean, that would be a great show for us to do one day. Just how do we make decisions? How do we confront, especially those, what I like to call those two, where you have two bad choices, both a dilemma, right? They're two dilemmas that you're choosing between, right? Do I get stuck on the right horn or on the left horn of this bull? Right. I mean, which side of that horn do I want to be?
No, it's interesting you say that because before I forget my joke, I was going to suggest that we create a subcommittee to talk about when we might do the show on decision making, because we really need to consider it carefully from all angles. But the the example that came to me when you said that was the last time I came off of a horse. It's like when the day that I decided I was too old to ever do that again, and that was actually a mule because I loved Gunsmoke when I was a kid, and I loved Festus rode a mule, and so I always wanted a mule, even though our vet told us, Tom, you don't want a mule. And it's like, and he said, they're not the same as horses. They don't, I won't give you the whole detail. He just said, basically, they're not going to signal you before they do anything. They're just going to do whatever they're going to do. And so this guy was trying to get to this female horse that he wanted to get to. And I'm on the back of this mule. And I've been thrown off horses several times in the past. And I often refer to it, I'm sure, as bucked off, but I really was never bucked off until this day. It was, I'm pretty sure the horse just turned left when I was looking right and fell off, But this, I was on that thing wondering if I could stay on for 8 seconds and realize that wasn't going to do me any good because nobody was coming for me. But it was that moment in time. And you know how when you're in those, it's like the same as if you're in an accident, a car accident or something. It's like everything slows down in your memory. It's like you have the things I thought about during that time. I couldn't have had time to think about it, but I did. I thought through this process, and I went through that deal where it's like, yeah, I'm coming off. I've got to decide when to come off. I've got to decide where to come off, because I'm not staying on. And that's
coming off is inevitable at this point in time.
And all of that is right there at that moment. And so I think that's a great metaphor when you go like, it's not like the lesser of the evils. It's like, no, we don't have the outcome like what you're saying. Either one of these things could be really bad. It's like, but I just have to make a decision. I landed on my back, just completely. I'm sure both of you have. They knocked the wind out of you. That right moment where I'm literally sitting there going, I don't know if I'm Christopher Reeve. I don't know if I'm dead. I don't know if I'm fine. And it's like, and I was okay. It was like it was just took me a little while to get back up, but that was definitely one of those decisions that I don't want to make this decision, but I have to. So yeah, we'll do that show after we carefully consider it.
Be a fun show.
Yeah. I don't think I even introduced you when we started the show. I just jumped into my stuff.
Listen,
that's Dr. Alan Berger. Also,
everybody knows me by now.
Everybody knows. And Patrick, and Patrick's there. Patrick, our producer's there,
jumping in. And
so all right.
And look, I think the show we had last week was tremendous. By the way, I really liked our guest, Nadine, a lot. I mean, she really brought a lot to the table. She's lived an amazing life, and you and I, and I know you sensed something very similar to me because I think you even mentioned it in the show. You just get a feeling when you're with her that she's solid. Yeah, she's solid. I mean, just a solid person. So let's a big shout out to Patrick for lining up an outstanding guest. Patrick, good job.
Yeah, thank you.
So how do you find these folks, Patrick? What are you doing? Are you throwing a net out there, or how are you?
Well, this guest in particular, I had met her personally through my girlfriend grew up with, her and her family, and they were kind of like family friends. And it just seemed right. I mean, her practice is in Hermosa Beach, like yours. And I don't know,
mine was
white. Right.
Now I'm on the airwaves.
This is his practice.
And, I just, I think we've had a good mix so far, but, trying to keep some female voices in the show and, get a nice spectrum of, it's good juxtaposition. I thought it would be.
I think it's better to bring the female voices in rather than to have Tom or I channel our feminine side.
Well, hey, it ain't nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
I just think we can get a lot better having that be more organic.
Now see that's an easy decision as decisions go. There
was no two choice dilemma there, Patrick. You hit that one right on the money.
Right.
That was one of those one hit drive the nail into the board. How many times have you done that, Tom? Have you ever been able to do that where you just line that hammer up and
No.
whack
No,
it.
no. As a matter of fact, this is serendipity here because I recently was talking to somebody about the fact and admitting I cannot drive a nail. It's like if any, I use that as an example for people who think things that are simple are going to be easy. It's like I'm frustrated. I can't drive a nail, and I don't have the confidence to do it. Is what I really think it is. I think it takes confidence to hit that with what you're talking about, and I do that tip tap 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 tap. You know, it's like because it bends right toward the and I try to put it back. And it's like, and I wrote this to a friend of mine who's going through some stuff, and I forget how it came up, but I said something about he was building something. I said, I can't drive a nail. And I said something in a way that I thought was clever or whatever, but he wrote back and he said, well, that's very well put. So I completed the thought by saying, I can write a sentence. I cannot drive it. I cannot drive a nail. It's like, so, but it sounds like you have done it. You can do it.
Well, I know. Well, yes, I think maybe in my lifetime I've done it. I've been successful maybe 4 times.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
still, I mean, I know the guys you're talking about who basically they're just amazing to watch because they just put it up there. And we're talking about a long.
Oh, we're
pow,
talking
pow,
about
they're done.
9-pack nails. Is that what they're called? Whatever.
Yeah,
Called.
yeah.
I mean, I'm blown away at those guys, and they just can, line that thing up, and it really is. It's like it's beautiful to watch. I mean, somebody that confident,
Now I'm imagining somebody who's been listening to our podcast and who we talked about our good podcast last time, and they said, "Oh no, you got to listen to this podcast. These guys are great. This wonderful. You're going to do it." And they're listening to this podcast so far, and they're going like, "What the hell is this about?" It's like, "Oh, it's just a couple of old carpenters,
talking about their experience with nails." And
Well, I was just Googling the sensation of time slowing down at times of stress where you've got to make a decision, because I, have been in a car accident and, similar phenomenon where I really felt like I was almost outside of myself, and I, I thought it might be a neurological reason for that. Maybe the brain is flooding with a certain kind of like fight or flight type chemical. But anyway, my spontaneous Googling did not yield any conclusive results. But
well, at the risk of making the topic of this show random thoughts, I had a car accident at one time where I have visual memory of my this is my first wife. It was this is before we all were crazy about seatbelts. So she was lying down asleep in the back seat. I was on the interstate, and I fell asleep, ran into the back of a semi truck. Gratefully, it was moving. I was moving faster, but it was still moving in the same direction. But my memory, when it took me a long time to figure this out, but I have a memory of watching her in the back. Because my immediate response would be to do that, but I didn't do that because all of my injuries were on my front. I hit my throat on the steering wheel and I hit my head on the windshield. It's like, so I would actually say from experience, I don't know how the world really works, but visually it felt like I turned around to look, and that I was not completely connected to my body at that time.
memory being unreliable, that's it kind of unmoors your sense of reality when you think about like how subjective it all is.
Well, you think I'm crazy. Patrick thinks I'm crazy.
I know I'm crazy.
Watch me tie all these random thoughts together.
All right, let's go.
Our topic today is self-esteem. We want to start talking about self-esteem. Tom's got his magic wand out, so he just did magic over me so I could do it. I cannot do it without that magic wand. And look, a big component. Well, first, let me say this. So the authority I go to learn about self-esteem is Dr. Nathaniel Branden. He passed away, I'd say, about 5 or 6 years ago now. But he was, I think, many considered to be the foremost authority on the subject. And I loved he's got a lot of great definitions of self-esteem, but one of them is when he was breaking down self-esteem, he says there's really 2 components in it. And one is self-esteem comes from a feeling that we can deal with life, that we can handle. In psychology, we call it self-efficacy, right? That I can meet whatever is being challenged to me, that I have the agency to cope with it, to deal with it, or to get the help to deal with it, that I'm going to somehow show up for myself, right? So he calls that self-efficacy. We could think of it as self-confidence. I mean, I think that works with that same kind of notion. But the other component he talked about was self-worth. Do we feel worthy of love and success? He says that you can feel confident that you can handle things, like the carpenter that's nailing those nails into the board may have a lot of confidence around his ability to do that, but it doesn't mean that he's going to have self-worth and that he's going to have a high degree of self-esteem. He may feel good about it. And how many people you hear that, and I hear it, Tom, they're wonderful at their jobs, what they do, and then they live in their personal lives where it's 180 degrees out. There's such a separation or incongruence between who they are at work and who they are personally when they're in the world.
Competence is aligned with confidence.
Competence.
Yeah. Because I'm a big believer that it's not only if you're competent at something, it's not only you're right, but actually what I've told people for years, I think it's a responsibility to feel confident, because, and I've got that from being around somebody, working with somebody who basically was really one of the better therapists. You talked about somebody just the other night, I think on in the Thursday group, Alan, you talk to people that are not trained, academically or credentialed as therapists, but are just natural. They're just the best. They're the best. And she's one of the best therapists I've ever seen work or ever worked with. Just tremendous confidence. And it's like, there's zero confidence. And it's like, and so the idea, I always felt like I was propping her up. I was always having to prop her up and try to convince her that she was good when she did that. So one of the things that she taught me was the idea that, no, in a way, what we need to do is we take that responsibility to do. If I am good at something, I don't need to overdo it. I don't need to, but I need to be able to acknowledge that I am. And it's like, and that's not arrogance. That's just congruence. And then I think those two things go together. And I think you're right. We can I like the distinction you're making, that we can have those and still not have, when you start talking about the self-worth, the word comes up in a lot of the work I've done is deservingness. Yeah. And if you don't feel like you deserve the stuff that is even coming your way, it will just bounce off. It will or pass right through you. You don't get it. You don't get to keep that feedback that the world is giving you, because you think it's ill-gotten gain.
Yep. That's a good point. I mean, so it's almost like we need that to absorb the experiences around us, so that they're just not, like it's like we're coated with Teflon if we don't have that, right? It just falls off. No matter how much feedback you get, no matter what somebody says to you, it doesn't seem to matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things, and if somebody listening to this and identifies with that, one of the things I've suggested to people through the years is pay attention to the different kinds of feedback you get across the board from different places, different people, and put this to the test. It's like, if the feedback you get that is positive is at least consistent. Like, in other words, you always, they always say they'll always say I'm entertaining. They'll always say that I'm informative. They'll always say, whatever it is, but it's either at least consistent, and sometimes just people have it to where it's just constant. Somebody's always going to comment on this. If you're getting that from all over the place and across time, then the confrontation here is you need to stop. And you need to start to learn how to accept that, because that's the truth. If somebody's bullshitting you, which is what the little guy in your head tells you, they're not all going to have the same bullshit. They're just going to pull something out of the air and say it. But it's like, when you hear the same thing over and over again, then you can believe it.
Right. I have to remind myself to sit with compliments that I get.
Yeah.
To actually take that moment to not let it, like you said, just slip through and, tied to my self-esteem for sure.
Yeah. And can I ask you a question about that?
Absolutely.
So what's the argument about? Is there an argument in your head at that moment to why you shouldn't keep it?
Well, I think the perfectionist voice, to not let any praise go to your head and to always drive with negative reinforcement towards whatever the greater goal might be. But without getting too into the weeds, that perfectionist voice is, led me more often to like negative outcomes.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, what's amazing to me, of course, is the only people we run into who are worried about being arrogant are people who are perfectionists who don't let themselves let that stuff in. The people who are actually arrogant aren't worried about it. So they're just arrogant.
That's right. You see, the other tie I was going to make is that this Scott Miller, who's brilliant, Dr. Scott Miller, who's done a lot of great research on a lot of different things, but he's one of the people that focuses on, instead of it being evidence-based practice, it's practice-based evidence. And so they go out and they do research on what is actually happening in the rooms instead of going to and creating a study where they've got depressed people and highly selected and put in which, our clients that you and I never get, just pure, our clients are kind of like a vegetable soup. There's all kinds of stuff going on for them, right? But in these studies, they want pure depression, let's say, right? So they really, really try to screen out for that, and then they say, well, this is the best treatment for that. Well, he went the other way. He says, let's look what practitioners do, and let's see what's the best practice-based evidence. And this is all the stuff about the value of the alliance in the therapeutic relationship. And, and all his work is on measuring that alliance because it has so much impact. But he also is into what makes somebody outstanding at what they do. How does a person get to that point? And it's so interesting because it builds on some of the stuff you say a lot, Tom. First of all, they have an expectation that it's going to take a long time to get to where they want to go. They don't have that, I'm just going to work hard for a year and then I'm going to have it under my belt. They say it's at least 1,000 hours or more that a person puts in before they get up to a certain level of competence and skill with, let's say, playing the piano or being a tennis player or guitar player or a good clinician or whatever it is, right? What unravels so many people is they come in with the expectation that they should be able to do it quicker. And sense. I always like what you said is set that bar low, man. I mean, low. So that as soon as your feet hit the ground, it's an amazing day. You have just gotten over any expectation by waking up.
I stood up.
I stood up today. And I love that because it's so true. I mean, if every one of us did that on a daily basis and said, look, what I just did made my day. Everything on top of this is gravy.
Well, part of that, it's interesting to say this, the stood up part, because part of that has to do with paying attention and it's a mindfulness thing. I think it's a consciousness about letting recording your experience consciously is the way I would say it. It's like, because when you said that, I went through the thing with back pains for multiple injuries many years ago now, but it was like for about 5 years, I was pretty debilitated and did a good job of hiding it for the most part. But literally, when I got up in the morning, I could not stand up straight. And it's like, and it was like, it was too painful to do that. And I couldn't lift things. I could do it but at one point I actually defined a good day for me as a day that before I got in my car to drive to the office, I was all the way upright. It's like, and the idea of holding on to those memories and understanding, so that by, we perceive by contrast, compare and contrast. It's like, so every time I literally can stand up and walk straight ahead, every time I can pick up a bag of grain for my wife and put it in the barn, it's like, I consciously have gratitude. No, and it's not to say to myself, which is really dangerous. A lot of people will have a problem with this because that's when their should monster comes back in and says, oh, you're being grandiose and you shouldn't, shouldn't, now that you're grateful, you shouldn't be complaining about anything else. In other words, you don't have a right to a problem. It's like, and the truth is, one of the things that's most important about this stuff is, no, I need to be able to have the gratitude that I can stand up straight right now, at the same time that I can be really upset about something else in my life, that I'm still just working on. And so I like, then you're right. But we've kind of adopted that here as part of Start Here, I think, is the power of lowered expectations. It's like, it's just, in the simplest version of that is simply, nobody looks at you don't come up to a flight of stairs knowing that you're headed for the first landing and think you're going to make it in the one step. You start walking up the steps.
Yeah, there's a screenwriter I follow on Twitter who he was giving some advice the other day, and what really spoke to me was lower your page count of the day. To hit your goals, just lower your daily goals, and before you know it, they'll add up to something significant. Right.
Make your goal what you're achieving. It's like, and of course that's when and that's also a really clever way when you're in with the therapy thing, is to flush out the perfectionist, because and you could probably identify with that, Patrick, from what you're saying, is like, so the moment that I say that to somebody, that perfectionist hears that as, oh my God, they're letting them off the hook. And they come in, and it's like, so we need the perfectionists to speak, because we're not going to outrun them. They're going to be there. We need to know what they say, and we need to change that relationship, so that basically we don't have to, I don't have to stop having a perfectionistic part of my personality any more than I have to stop being an alcoholic. I just need to make different choices. Going back to our original thing, we make good decisions.
It's amazing how much shit doesn't get done because of the perfectionist. Yeah.
Oh God.
I mean, years of evidence of, what is it? Perfect being the enemy of good, or
my procrastination, I think, is very much, or at least largely, based on perfectionism. And I'm a master procrastinator. It's bad.
Well, and I like how, to plug this in now into the theme that you and I have been talking about lately, is instead of working at, focusing on self-love to increase your self-esteem, let's start with self-respect.
Absolutely.
Let's start with, at the end of the day, respecting yourself. And you're going to do a lot better respecting yourself if you are managing these expectations that you have about what you need to do that day. And I think that there's so much to this, because so many people set themselves up with these ideas of who they're supposed to be, what they're supposed to be doing, et cetera, et cetera. And it's hard. A lot of people go to bed at night feeling like they failed that day.
One of the things, of course, we work with people on is those two parts. One of the ways we can divide a personality is do being and doing, and so very often when there's a problem of not feeling like you deserve something, and a lack of love, it really lands in the being part. So the idea is, the other thing I like about measuring self-esteem at the end of the day is, like, which I set it up to say, know what your value system is and live as congruently with that as you can. Be able to give some examples of how you lived according to your value system that day. That's really a part of doing. It's like, it'll get to being. We're gonna get it down in there. But it's like, if you ask somebody if they love themselves, most of us are going to go all the way back into, that being part, all the way back into our childhood, that other stuff. And if we have messages that say, and some people have those messages, a lot of people have those messages that powerfully just say, no, you came bad.
Yeah.
People are surprised to hear that other people have that, but no, I lost count a long time ago how many clients I say, well, how long, you feel like you're bad, there's something bad about you. How long has that been? They go, always. And I'll actually follow up the question. So you mean you were born that way? And they without hesitating, they say, what? Yeah. And it's like, you realize what a burden.
Yes. And how much pain that's created through a person's life that's felt that way.
And they haven't ever known they had a choice, to another choice to get away from that. Because, of course, it's bullshit. It's not true.
Well, I love to think about, when I hear that, it's like took on in an injunction very early on in their life about don't.
Yep.
No, you're never going to be okay. Don't be, the world will be better off without you. And look, I mean, there's parents that have said that to kids. My God, I wish I never had you. I mean, can you imagine hearing that from someone that brought you in the world? I wish that you were never here.
They were not greeted in any way, and I don't mean just verbally. I mean, but just with we're glad you're here. You're
Right.
welcome. We want you here. It's like, I mean, if you say that to some people, that we work with when we're dealing with that self-esteem way down deep, if you imagine somebody saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I really want you to be here," and you can even just see the discomfort in their face and body. It's like, it's incongruent.
That's
It's
right.
like, this doesn't feel like it fits here.
And I agree with you. I think that being celebrated and being seen are incredibly important elements of self-esteem.
Yeah.
Because if we were celebrated, we're told essentially you have a right to take up the space that you're taking it up here in the world.
Yeah.
There's a place for you.
Yeah.
You're welcomed. That's why I love, if you think about a birthday, it really is that moment to say, I'm glad you were brought into this world.
Yeah.
It's not just marking another year of life. It's a celebration of our birth.
Al Peso and Diane Gordon Peso's psychomotor psychotherapy that my wife and I were trained with through Jackie Damgard in Atlanta. One of them that I'd never seen on a developmental need list before when we got to that work was the word you just used, which was place. You have a place here. And it's amazing how it can be construed. It can be physical. It can be like you have a place here in this house. You have a place here. It is, but it begins with we're glad you're here. You belong here with us.
That's right.
And so, and without that message, I mean, I don't know exactly how that works, but it doesn't just stay neutral. Shame finds us then.
That's right. That's
We're
right.
vulnerable. We're vulnerable, and it's like it's like we're not gonna. I've never met somebody who you ask what they feel about themselves, and they're neutral.
How fundamental is the having of a place to a person's self-esteem? I'm sure it varies.
I mean, I think it's, of course, it's in a combination with all these the other needs that we have. But since being made aware of that in that work, it's definitely one of the things I pay attention to and listen for early on when I'm meeting a client. If it feels like there's some real foundational stuff, it's about belonging. It's about, and it's because if you don't have that, you really do feel like you are not welcome. Have you ever been in a place where you clearly aren't welcome? I have, and it's like that's even just in a normal, just a day-to-day scenario. It's like that's a horribly uncomfortable thing to be able to feel that way about your life. And of course, what's the other thing that comes from that? I'm a mistake.
That's a
yeah. You just go. My heart just stops when you say that. It's like, oh no, I don't have to know you to know that you're not a mistake. And then the work begins, because what you're talking about. I love what you're saying about Scott Miller stuff, because when people talk forever when people talk about evidence-based, is your therapy evidence-based? It's like that guy did really good with it over there. That's my evidence.
And look,
and I understand why they have that research. I get that.
But I'll tell you, it is something that I was a big critic of, how important that became in the field, this evidence-based practice, and that everybody was being measured on that, because you and I have, the way medicine started was not to do these big studies. You treated a person, you saw what happened to them. That's called evidence-based practice, right? Or practice-based evidence, right? Practice-based evidence. You had one, you did this to this person, they responded, and then we said, what? Maybe this is something we can try with some other people.
Well, think about how we learned. And I noticed when we first met, we both used the word, and I think it originates with you guys with Gestalt, but I certainly had picked it up by the time I met you, is the word experiment. Let's try this experiment. It's like, and let's try to see if this works. It's like, and see this. So it's,
Well, and look, and what we're talking about too is when we talk about self-respect is an important part of getting to a place of feeling good about yourself. Is, I've become a fan of Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements.
Mhm.
And the first agreement, he talks about being impeccable with your word.
Mhm.
Well, what he is essentially saying, he is saying be impeccable with other people, but more important, before you can be impeccable with your word with others, you have to be impeccable with yourself.
Mhm.
Well, what is that if it's not self-respect?
Mhm.
If I honor what I'm saying and I really attend to it, and meaning sometimes I don't want to do that. It's the ability to say no.
Right.
And say,
Yep.
really, I know you'd like me to do it. It's important to you, but I'm not moved right now, and I need to feel moved in order to do this because I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it reluctantly. I don't want to show up in my life like that. That dialogue becomes such an important dialogue for self-respect.
Yes.
And yet most people would say, well, why are you being so difficult? Can't you just do it? Can't we just go get along to get along? I mean, can't we just be more compromising with each other to get along, right? And there's a real big difference between compromise and doing things because you want to, meaning cooperate with integrity. I mean, and you and I talk about this all the time. So our relationship with ourself, has so much to do with all of this. And then we go into this myth of singularity because we're in relationship with a lot of different parts of ourselves.
Yeah, there's not just one of me. Yeah, there's it's and I think that
And look, get back to self-respect. It's like if you're should monster, you're letting your should monster run your life. Can you respect yourself? You see, that's the big point of thing. If I'm letting my alcoholic self run my life, I'm not respecting myself because I'm feeling a lot of shame and pain in terms of what I'm doing and how I'm letting myself down, how I'm letting other people down that love me.
Well, this brings up a good point though, and that's if you are even aware of what you think. It's like because see that the thing is when my should monster is in charge, when our alcoholism is in charge, basically they're the ones driving the damn bus at that point, and they're not gonna have those same. They're not gonna, I mean, I really wouldn't ask how my alcoholism is feeling. It's like how you doing? Because he had every reason for the longest time to feel very confident because he was pretty much in charge. It's like, but so often what we end up doing, and I think this is a really good point to make especially with the like talking about Miguel Ruiz's book. Is want people to know when you look at those agreements, be impeccable to your word, and to be able to and boy, another big one was take nothing personally. It's like want people to know those are things we work toward. We have nobody, because sometimes people will take those things and they say I can't do that. I go like, well, yeah, that would be. I mean, I can't drive a nail. It's like, so if I would, if I gave a shit about that, if that mattered to me for myself, and that's another thing about self-esteem is it's amazing how often we just pick at things we're no good at and they go to our self-esteem. You get to choose your sources of self-esteem. It's like very little investment in driving nails, for me. Now, if I couldn't write a sentence, I got a problem with that because I do care about that. But it's like, so, but we said, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but it's like with Nadine last time we got to that place where we said, I shared that one of the things I say with clients sometimes when they give me a really negative view of themselves, I'll follow that by saying, well, what do you think? And it's the idea is no, we want to help them find out who they really are underneath there, because they are the one. And of course, there's a reason they're staying out of touch with that person, because that person is the one holding on the pain, all the pain.
Yes.
And until and I mean, it actually is very logical to kind of stay hidden as long as all of that's going on. Hopefully what we're doing is helping people be safe enough to come out and experience the pain, but not for its own sake, but so that you can get through it.
That's right.
It takes a while to develop that relationship with yourself, doesn't it? I mean, I'm very jealous of anybody who's had any kind of I mean, I just feel like in people generally in their 20s, you know, that's the time for knocking their head around and figuring out what doesn't work. And, you know, I'm sure that there are some who develop that emotional wisdom early, you know, but that wasn't my case.
Well, you're not talking to anybody here that it happened early for. I'm speaking for Alan too, but not me. And it's like, and it's a process. It's like it's not false humility to say, I'm getting ready to be next month. I'll be 67, and no, that little hateful guy. He's not only still there. He tags along with me, talks to me. I do have a different relationship.
67.
I know.
That's great, man.
Hey, listen, now at the risk of going back to our other subject, which is random thoughts, I got my first vaccination yesterday, and I got called out at the pharmacy by somebody. I was sitting there with there was about three of us there, and there was a young woman there, and there was me, and this woman said, "What are you all doing getting your shots? I haven't been able to get mine." And the young woman said, I didn't even think about her being so young. She said, I'm a child care worker, and I just said, I'm old as the hills. and she challenged me because of my fucking hair color. It's like, she said, not unless you dye your hair. And I'm going like, damn it. People have always told me I've dyed. I wanted to go like, look closer here. I promise. Look at the face.
You do have some great hair.
Well, of course, the beard's covered with a mask. So I got my face is white like an old golden retriever. It's like, but that's covered. So apparently,
that's true. That's good.
But I thought, damn it, betrayed by my hair.
So one of two shots, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm scheduled to get back to the other one. I've referred to myself now as half vaccinated.
Well, that's great to hear. I might have mine by the end of May, so by my birthday. That's what they say anyway. So hopefully,
good. I hope so too. What's my birthday? I did my birthday 67. How old are you going to be?
I'm going to be 35.
Hey, he's old enough where he has to stop and count.
Yeah, I really. I don't know where I am half the time, but yeah, 35. It feels good. I mean, I don't know. Life is like really good lately. So despite how angry I am at everything happening outside of my periphery. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 35, that's a good age. I mean, that's, if you hurt, if some part of your body hurts, you can identify why. Mm-hmm. When you get to be our age, it's like it just starts hurting and you go like, what happened? You go like, nothing.
Well, I want to leave people with one more thought in terms of the self-esteem stuff. And then we're going to talk next time. Part 2 will be about how to raise your self-esteem. Let's imagine little Maddie. Well, let's use Cece because she's 3 years old now. Cece just had her birthday. So now she's talking up a storm and walking. And so let's say she goes to the nanny's house. She comes in the house and she runs up to me, goes, Daddy, 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 look at what I did today. Look at what I did today. Look at this picture I made. Mm-hmm. Now, Patrick, what do you think parents are taught to do with their kids when that happens? What's the first response that parents are taught typically? This is practice, Patrick, for when you have kids.
Oh no.
Patrick's under. You better get this right, Patrick. Tom and I are going to be incredibly disappointed if you blow this. Now the pressure's on.
I'm gonna have to bunt this question.
He's gonna bunt it. Look, no. You just look. Hey, Daddy, look at what I did. Look at what I did. What do you say? Just come on, spontaneously. You don't have to be right about this.
Oh, that's great, honey.
Yes, that's right. That's what every parent has a tendency to do. That's great, honey.
That's not the right thing to do.
Well, let's just explore what happens now. It's not. Look, we're gonna just.
Well, first of all, I want to be able to say what my first response was, which is what is that?
All right, so that's a different kind of response. So when you say, look, that's great, honey. So she goes back to the nanny the next day and she's drawing. Now, what might she be thinking?
Seeking your approval, right?
How is daddy going to like that? Is he going to like this again? Do I get that's a great daddy again? Now, think about the difference. If you would have said, instead of that's great, honey, you would have said, wow, look how excited you are. That must have been fun what you did today when you drew that picture. You know, honey, it's important to do things like that make you feel excited like that are enjoyable.
Yeah, I love that.
You see the difference?
Yeah. Oh God,
huge difference.
Well,
So
your parents are your mirrors. So it's like you're mirroring the kid back. You're not giving them part of you.
You're not giving them part of you. You're mirroring the kid back. That's a great way to say it. Now, when she goes back to nanny, what is she thinking about, Patrick?
How to impress herself and entertain herself with her own gifts.
Where's her center of gravity?
Mm-hmm.
In herself, isn't it?
Yeah.
You see what happens?
Yeah, and
other one,
that doesn't mean you can't say you like it, because you can do that too, right?
You like it, but after, because the kids want to please us so bad, put that in down the road. But if you start with, wow, I see your excitement now, the child's experience is being validated, not what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the difference. And see, that's the heart of self-esteem. Now, look, we can have the best intentioned parents saying how great that is. Because look, for a long time, giving kids positive feedback was considered to be the heart of self-esteem for kids. Dorothy Briggs up in Palos Verdes in California wrote a whole book about it. You know, positive reinforcement for your kids. That's great. That's wonderful. Look how wonderful that is. Let me hang it up on the refrigerator. All that other stuff is what went on for years. And we didn't realize is that what we're doing is shifting that child's focus from more of an experience of or internal experience of themselves versus looking for approval. Yeah. So you got it, Patrick. See? It
makes me wonder, as somebody who drew a lot of cartoons for people when I was a little kid, makes me wonder if that's where I got some of my ideas about, my own value on the stuff I do.
That's it, right? Because how is other people going to like this versus how am I liking this thing? And one of the things we know is that low self-esteem is accompanied by an obsession with getting the approval of other people and being so aware of the disapproval of others. Is that those two things go on, man? There's
real and perceived.
Oh, real and perceived. It's huge. And see, so this becomes an important part of this dialogue, because really for us to get our self-esteem back means we've got to move that emotional center of gravity back into our own person. And that's why that Don Miguel Ruiz, when he starts out with being impeccable with your word, means be impeccable with yourself. Yeah. That's why when I love what Tom says, he says, are you respecting yourself? Right? That these are the important questions that bring us back to our relationship with ourselves first.
I love that you often use that, and I think it's because of your history because you're an athlete. It's like you talk about center of gravity. You talk about balance so much. It's like that's always stuck with me. Just your language about that, because you can bring that back. I mean, that is such a. Even when we were talking earlier about pain and stuff like that, what do you learn when you're dealing with that kind of stuff? It's all about posture and position and getting your head on top of your spine, all these things. It's about center of gravity.
All right, so another great show today, gentlemen. Great show. And then next week we're going to go part 2. So
I like the focus getting better with growing your self-esteem. Really,
if you want to stay miserable, don't tune in next week, because we're going to really mess that up for you. We're going to really give you ways that we are certain that will raise your self-esteem. So if it's important for you to suffer longer, don't tune in next week.
Patrick, you have to come though.
Either way, I'm there. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll have an audience of one next week.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
It's a spiral, not a circle. Goes round, round, round. Look for solutions, be your own friend. Never say never in either direction. Look in the mirror, trust the reflection.